Okay. Why don't we get started? I'm going to read our opening prayer. David then can read some poetry, and then and we may even bring in some other poetry today or next week. It depends on how things go. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe. You have sanctified us through your commandments and commanded us to busy ourselves in things of Torah. Amen.
Amen.
Well, we're we're finding out that the Israelites have come together and they have provided the funds in order to build we had a long discussion about the tabernacle, and now we are going to we're completing the description of the hangings of the if you will, drapes, that surround the tabernacle.
Did you forget David? I mean, Dovid.
Yes. Thank you. But let me come back to you. Thank you very much, Michael. My mind is racing ahead. David, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Marty, and thank you, Michael. Next week, I am going to be, unfortunately, unable to attend. I will be back in 2 weeks from today. So today I'm going to give you two poetical quotations. The first one is from Walt Whitman. Give me the splendid silent sun with all his beams full dazzling, which is what I just looked at just a few minutes ago. The second one is a very, very famous poem that was written by Jane Taylor in 1806, and it's called The Star. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are, up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. When the blazing sun is gone, when he nothing shines upon, then you show your little light, twinkle, twinkle, all the night. Then the traveler in the dark thanks you for your tiny spark. He could not see which way to go if you did not twinkle so. In the dark blue sky you keep, and often through my curtains peep, for you never shut your eye until the sun is in the sky. Is your bright and tiny spark lights the traveler in the dark, though I know not what you are, twinkle, twinkle, little star.
Thank you, David. Thank you. I appreciate it, and I'm sorry for my lapse. So we were talking about the various hangings and the sockets for the poles and everything that the Israelites are doing. So now we're on verse 16, and why don't we read verses 16 through 20?
What chapter are we in, Marty?
Oh, we are on 38. 38:16.
Okay.
Okay, would you like me to start to begin?
Sure, David, sure.
Okay, all the hangings of the court round about were of fine twined linen, and the sockets for the pillars were of brass, and the hooks of the pillars and their fillet of silver, and the overlaying of their capitals of silver, and all the pillars of the court were filleted with silver. And the screen for the gate of the court was the work of the weaver in colors of blue and purple and scarlet and fine twined linen. And 20 cubits was the length, and the height of the breadth was 5 cubits, answerable to the hangings of the court. And do you want me to go on to 19?
Yes, all the way through the end of 20.
Okay, and the pillars were 4 and the sockets 4 of brass. Their hooks of silver and their overlaying of their capitals and their fillet of silver. And all the pins of the tabernacle and of the court round about were of brass.
Okay. In some books, instead of brass, it says copper. Now, any comments about this? Yes, Gail. Gail, you're muted.
I apologize. I need to ask Mary about a particular word in Hebrew. And if we could, it'll just take a second. Back to chapter 20 or 36, and it's verse 35. And the word that I have is cherubs. He made a pavilion of blue and purple and scarlet, and he made it designers work with cherubs. And I wonder if
It's cherubim. It's the same word that it's the can you hear?
yes,
It's the same word that appears when they build the Aron HaKodesh, the ark. Upon the ark, there are 2 cherubim. And and that's the same word, but written, it's not cherubim, it's cherubim, kruvim.
is it
It's with a
angels
K.
or is it baby? Because cherubs are baby angels, so I'm not sure what that is. in
You know
Hebrew.
what, we talk a little bit about
did.
it before, and in my mind, in my personal mind, it's something that disturbs me. And the reason is that we are not supposed to make any statues and so forth and pray to them. And here they are sitting on top of the most holy places that we can think of. So it's, for me, I need to look at it more. And Gail, since we love our friend Friedman, maybe in one of the books it talks about that. I always had a problem with it. And that's why when you say cherubim, that in the English means these little thingies with their two heads open and, you know, flying around. Those don't exist in our tradition. Those are nonsense.
Okay. All right,
Here it
thanks.
seems, yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Marty. I didn't want to make a whole session out of it, but
No, it's very important, Gail. It's really important because it's troublesome to me.
Okay. Any other discussion about that? Well, what about any comments about the work being done in verses 16 through 20? Yes, Don.
It's interesting that the dissimilar metals, copper and silver, are used at the joint because they're not neutral. Copper does react with silver, at least silver nitrate, and produces, first of all, it exchanges ions and corrodes. It also produces, I think, nitrous oxide maybe, which people get high on these days, laughing gas. So I don't know if the chemistry has any meaning within the scripture, but it just struck me as interesting.
It gave them extra work. They had to keep polishing all of this.
And
That's
extra fun.
But it would be a slow process over time in the desert. It doesn't have enough humidity to allow the reaction to occur at a rapid rate. However, Don is
Don, I don't think that in any place they're talking about, you say found, I mean, melting and putting together. What's the word? Well, anyway, melting and putting together. The last word is
Amalgamating.
nechoshet.
No, no.
Yeah, well, yeah, and getting gold. But everything is separated. You have you have this part and this part and this part, and each one is made out of a different material. And here it talks about copper, and it's not brass, it's copper. And later on, we know that Solomon had his mines by Eilat that were nechoshet. And so it's copper, the last word.
If I may, Rabbi Mary, it's copper that's the problem, not brass. Because
That's right.
and the two are in close contact because they're mortise and tenon joints, and you only need a little bit of morning dew to get in the joint, and you have a reaction going. So but I think, as Marty points out, it's minimal because it's so dry in the desert. It's
Right.
not.
However, there is something much more important, and that is those of you who are familiar with the periodic table in chemistry, copper, silver, and gold are in the same column. They all have similar reactants, the way they react to things, but gold does not react as much as silver, and silver does not react as much as copper. Okay, this is what Don was getting after. I'm trying to simplify it, Don, just rather than going into all the electron rings and like that. But
You go for it, Marty.
but the point is that you have three different levels towards purity. And so there's gold is reserved for where in the Mishkan?
When you afford it.
For the ark.
Ark.
The silver around that and copper around further out. And so what I'm saying is they were aware, they didn't call it chemistry back then, but alchemistry. They
Alchemy.
were aware of the reaction, the different levels of reactivity of metals. That's all I'm going to say.
Here is I'm the humanities person. I'm not the chemistry and science. So in my mind, the issue is things that have different values. And the gold is the most valuable. And the menorah also is from not just covering gold, is gold. So they're using for artifacts there the gold as the highest level. So I think it's about the value of things, which is silver is lower and copper is lower.
Yes. And so I just think that they were already aware of these things way back when. Okay. That's all I'm going to say about that. Yes, Gail.
The colors are interesting too. They're blue, purple, and scarlet. Okay, blue, red, and of course the blue and the red combined make purple. So, right, Mary? So
yeah, it's true.
It's interesting that they're all in the same place on the color wheel. So, or next to each other.
Yeah, that's another, and that's another thing. These are royal colors. In the future, these are the colors of kings and queens. Even today, you know, in the British court, you're going to see that. That's like the colors. Well,
Okay.
I won't go more
Yes.
than that.
Okay. Grace is going to sign in again. Okay, yes. Yes, Don.
I just would want to mention that because some metals are more precious than others, and some colors are royal and some aren't, has to do with the scarcity of them. Because with the colors,
Exactly.
the dyes were much harder to obtain, and gold is just harder to get than copper.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
that's how it works. It's economics, really.
yes.
You
Yeah,
can
yeah.
discuss it in many different ways, but you can even discuss it geologically. The area, because the area of concern with volcanoes and rift valleys and like that, that's California for you. And that's Alaska. It's a different environment, but we find the same things there as we do, And you shift over a little bit over to the Arizona desert and you find the same things being mined here. Okay, but they had to do it. Just drive east of Green Valley and go over to Sonoyta, and you will see lava rocks all over the surface in there. And the lava contains the iron, is part of, but embedded in that are other heavy metals. And so they had resources to mine some of this in ancient times, whenever this, and they were aware of all of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And
all.
Marty, you're right about dyes. Do you know that when you wear the talit, you have the corners of the talit, and
Yes.
one of them is the most valuable one, and its color is
Blue.
blue. Thank you. Now, the blue, they explained that it was very difficult to find, and they extracted it from snails by the beach.
Yes.
Don't ask me how they knew, but that's the value of that blue, and that's how they made blue. It's interesting also, if we're going to art in the Middle Ages and so forth, how they made the colors by themselves with different pigments, and many of them were natural pigments.
Now, there's another, since we're on the subject, I can also toss out trade routes. Okay, there are a lot of trade routes that come through this area. Okay, from Asia and also from the Mediterranean and other European areas. So, over time, it just keeps, and then it became more extensive, and expansive. Don, you had your hand up and then Pastor Bruce.
Yeah, just real quick, Marty, you mentioned Sonoyta.
Yeah.
My younger son and his family, wife and young daughter, just left me yesterday, and they brought their bikes and did a bike camping trip up through the trails and mountain roads and old mining roads up to Sonoyta and down through Patagonia. And I rode with them the first 30 miles on those trails, and the minerals, the variety of minerals is just incredible right on the trails. All different colors, the turquoise from the copper and the red from the iron, and there's cobalt and blue, and this is an incredibly rich area for geologically. They did 122 miles, camped 2 nights. That's past my ability now, so I turned around and came home. But they were blown away by the geology up through there.
So it's an excellent comment. So now if we fast forward to modern times and why certain parts of the world are always in conflict, it's not about, religion can be an excuse, but it's really about the resources of areas and the trade routes. Throwing some warm water
Oil,
ports.
oil, 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 oil.
That's right. And you
And
start.
water,
and
water, water, water.
You got
water.
You got it.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
so many different things are fit into this story. In just this little paragraph, it opens up a whole barrage of different subjects. So anyway, Pastor Bruce, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, I really was just agreeing with the oil and the water, which usually
Yeah.
don't mix anyway, so hey. But the bottom line for me is, okay, we've talked about the scientific and the societal and the geological, and we've talked, is there anything, I'm racking my brain because we started bringing it up to modern day. And as I always think, okay, how does this apply to me in a spiritual sort of way? Does anybody have any thoughts about just what we read in a way that makes sense for today and for me personally, of what I can apply to my life? And I've been trying to think through that, because this is a very practical thing, that we're dealing with here from back there. But what is there significance for now? Is there significance for today? And technically, my favorite color is blue. It always has been. Don't ask me why. I've always liked blue. My wife's favorite color is purple. I don't know why, but that's her favorite color. And she came from Nebraska, so it's always go big red, that's in there. So,
well, I'm glad you
anyhow.
brought that up, because we can tie it together, but we have to look at it. I'm going to take it from the science
Sure.
and try to apply it to the more spiritual.
Yeah. I mean,
When
I've
we
just
see
been
the
really-
world,
Yeah.
when we see the world as color, we are seeing reflected light, okay, from all the different objects. We call those different colors the spectrum of light. So whether it's skin tone, whether it is color of hangings, wall hangings, whether it is the color of hair, whether it's all reflected light, but we can create, using a prism, a spectrum of light from red to blue and purple, with the yellow in between. And the other colors, that's
Rainbow.
right.
The
Some
rainbow.
people were talking about the color wheel, but if you look at light as a spectrum, but thanks to Isaac Newton, you can also take that and refract it back to white light, a source that we are talking about that would be pure white light. Everything else is reflecting that, is absorbing a portion of that light energy and reflecting a small part out. Okay, but if we look at it that way, and that is going to dovetail into one of the discussions that come out of the book of Exodus. How do you take one and the many and unite the two? This is one example. Michael had his hand up. Don and Mary. Okay.
Well, I do just like to respond to Pastor Bruce. He says his favorite color, your favorite color, Pastor, is blue. And you really don't know why, but it's probably because you're thinking of the song My Blue Heaven. And that's all I wanted to say.
That's good. That's a good one. I like that, Michael. Go ahead, Todd.
Yeah, that's good, Michael. But I was just going to say, the spiritual value of these verses to me, they're a little more prosaic because I have to keep remembering that the Ark and the Tabernacle were lost when the first temple was destroyed. And this text was written after that. So I look at this as a manual for the reconstruction. It's so detailed that I look at it as a hope for the second temple, that it all can be put back together and Humpty Dumpty can come back together again. That's how I see it. I don't see much. I think it's pretty prosaic at this point.
Yeah, but the details are there. That's right. Excellent point. Yes, Rabbi Mary.
Okay, I'm going to go back to Pastor Bruce because his question is a question and a statement that I pose very, very much. What's this book for if it doesn't work for us today? Right. Now, I'm an artist and the colors are part of my trade. Now, if we look at colors in a couple of ways, first of all, what do the different colors to our being, to our feelings? And we know that they do. We know that in hospitals, they paint the colors of something green that's not a very nice green, especially in the operation rooms. That's one. The second one, colors converted into symbols. In our Western society, when you go to a funeral, we wear black. Someone decided. In Japan, they wear white.
That's right.
So we have here a difference of people assign to the colors different roles. Mm-hmm. That's one. I mean, blue is a very calming color. And they tell us when we paint, they said, never put a piece of red in the center of your painting because it attracts all the attention to there. Sure. I'm there to break those rules, but it's not, but the rule that they'll teach you would be that, because red is a very attractive color to ourselves. We see it. And I think that in research about babies, that probably was the first color that they detect. So now, what colors do you wear when you teach? No, when you perform services, Bruce?
It just depends on the service as well. I always choose a tie. I've got plenty that have been given to me over the years, so I could wear a different one every week. But I always choose the tie and the color that reflects the personality of the deceased, if I'm doing a service like that. Mm-hmm. If it's a holiday, I will choose the color that reflects more of the holiday in my attire. That's how I do it. So I just normally, now the old fashioned black suit and white shirt, I did not necessarily go on with that like you. That didn't make any sense to me to do that because, and our church does not reflect that either. So I have a lot more blue and shades of blue shirts in my color wheel than I do everything else. And a lot of my ties would have some sort of that in it as well. But I have special occasion things of which I use. I was very purple a few Sundays ago.
Oh, well,
yeah.
Yeah.
But you see, Pastor Bruce, you just say something very interesting. You wear the color that reflects the personality of the person that you talk about in a funeral.
Yes.
So we have here personality and color that you work with. The other one is the holidays. Those really kill me. Now, are we over the green one? The Irish one.
Oh, St. Patrick.
The
Patrick.
holiday,
St.
St.
Patrick.
Patrick. You know, they paint everything green and green and green. No idea why. Don't ask me. I don't know.
The Emerald,
Christmas
Emerald
is-
Isle.
The Emerald Isle.
Emerald Isle of Ireland. That's why I know they do
Yes.
that.
Yeah, and for Christmas are colors too, you know, and they tell the Jews, don't use the colors of Christmas. So they insist, don't, so put just blue and some silver, not gold, some silver. Those are the colors that will represent out. So that's a very interesting thing. You have the art use of colors, that if you do art, you can ask me more or less. I won't have answers, but you can ask and just stay. And you have symbolic use of colors for certain events. And now if we look at the flags of the world, they always are going to tell you that they represent, this is for the water, this is for the oil, and this is for the broccoli. So, you know, again, you have symbolism on the colors, and it's very much for today.
Sure.
The Jewish or the Israeli flag is blue and white. And they put the Magen David that no one knows what that means. I mean, we just think that that's the shape of it. And it has a reason. Now, one thing, and I'll shut up. One thing that Rabbi Zalman Schechter Shlomi introduced was not to have talitot, the shawls, just black and white or blue and white. He was in a summer camp with kids, and I said, okay, let's have making shawls and use any colors of the rainbow. And from then on, we'll see talitot in all the colors of the rainbow. So the playing with colors today is a very powerful thing of connections with symbols, with feelings, with personalities, as you mentioned, for holidays, for symbolism of countries, and so forth.
Thank you.
I
Thank
hope
you. Thank you very much.
That's good.
Michael.
As this discussion of colors, I've been, I have thought about colors for a very, very long time, and it really comes from music. And I can apply it in different ways. First, I would say in the medical profession, colors are pretty significant. And that is these medical facilities, doctors' offices, some of them, but the medical facilities, your waiting rooms, they are now painted in pastel colors. They're getting rid of the white walls, white. Doctors themselves are not wearing white coats anymore. They're coming in dressed naturally. And so that has to do with, I'm sure you're familiar with that term, white coat, the white coat syndrome, when people are afraid of the doctor, such as myself. And so they're getting away from wearing that white. And if I may say this, I didn't want white walls in my home. There is nothing white in my home. I'm talking about white paint. White paint. And so we have some appliances that are white, but not one drop of white paint. And my home is a very, very simple home. It's an 1,850 square foot home. And what I have is two colors. The main color is a forget what they call it, Venetian plaster instead of paint.
We can
And
see it. We see it.
We see it behind you,
we can
Michael.
see
We
it.
see
We
your
see it
colors.
behind you.
Oh yeah. So
It's
you
right
see that, and throughout the home, when people come into my home for the first time, they say they look at it and they say my home is absolutely gorgeous, but it's no different than it's a track home like my next door neighbor. but what they see is the color. The color makes an incredible impression. When you walk into a home like mine with white walls, it's just really nothing, but it's the color that makes all the difference in the world. Also, the tint of light. You can take a light bulb and have it dipped with different colored tints. And this is where it comes from my music and entertainment, because many places where I played, in particular where I was a partner in a club in Beverly Hills for 16 years, I changed the color of the tint, and it made a tremendous difference in the look. When people walked in, they saw something different. And so the color plays such a big part that people don't realize. So this is highly interested. I'm interested in this.
Just to mention what Michael just said, that it sparked something. Today, you can actually, and computers do this all the time, you can take color and link it up with tone in music. And you can create light shows accordingly based on the music that's being played. Likewise, you can reverse it. So you can, because all you're doing is dealing with different types of wavelengths. And to give you an idea, some of you who, this is directed to just a few of you who know about the cosmologic microwave background, okay? And you see different tones of color in there. And that's computer generated, so we can see the differences in the vibrations of atoms, okay? The different vibrations of molecules, okay? There's a tonal quality to it. It's a harmonic. And this has been studied again and again. What does that mean? I'm not going to go there. All I'm going to do is mention that. And, but it shows a harmonic pattern. Harmonics is what musicians love. Harmonics is what people who write poetry or literature love. Okay, people who paint, the same thing. There are different ways of using that concept. But there is a problem with the physics of harmonics. Harmonics is what brings down, it has the capability of bringing down bridges and buildings. That's all I'm going to say there. You can look all this up. Everything I mentioned, you can look up in these different aspects to harmonics. And there's a scheme to it. Look at your screen that you're right in front of you, and what is the predominant color we are all wearing shades of? Pastor Bruce, I'm going to disregard your square. But we all have shades.
I have blue in my Nashville shirt.
There you go. Okay. But it's all shades of blue and purple. Isn't that interesting?
It is.
Go ahead. Okay, Gail, and then back to Michael. Gail, you're muted.
Talking about how what you didn't mention is how limited we are in the color spectrum we can actually see from human eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I've been reading a book about animal senses, and there's a lot of critters out there that can see a lot more than we can, because their eyesight is, color wise is much vaster than ours. So we're very limited to a certain amount of colors, where the animals kingdom is not necessarily.
Yeah,
The same with
they
sound.
are limited in their
And
way.
sound is the same thing. In sound, the dogs can hear what we cannot
Yeah.
hear,
That's right.
and so forth. Yeah, you're absolutely right. We are limited in all areas.
But the dog is also limited in other ways. And the cat is limited in other ways. And the giraffe is limited in other ways. And we are. So we have to realize all those limitations, but put it all together. If you think of everyone being an important part of a spectrum, then you realize that each one, whatever you're discussing, you have to understand that it's each critter, each plant, whatever you do is focused on one thing, and they've adapted to living with that over eons. But put it all together, and it comes back to a one complete spectrum. And that's what the message I'm trying to get across here. We can single out, but the story that we're reading is about the one and the many. Okay? Or the many and the one. It goes both ways. Yes, Don.
Can I finish my point?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Michael. Go ahead.
The final point that I want to mention was regards to our temple, the Bet Shalom Temple Center.
Mm-hmm.
And there is 2 independent lighting systems in the sanctuary.
Mm-hmm.
People don't know that, they don't realize it, and the same utility lights are used for everything. When I do a performance, they're not on. I use the secondary lighting system with the incandescent.
Mm-hmm.
Now, lighting can also enhance the spirituality of what's going on.
Yes.
And I remember one time Steve Marin gave a Friday night service, and I talked to Steve about it, and he says, okay, we're going to try that. And we used not the utility lights, those fluorescent lights.
That's right.
And it was absolutely beautiful. People were not used to it because they were seeing those utility lights over and over and over again. They really didn't get it. But if you walk into a church, you will not see utility lights given at a service. You'll see, for the most part, incandescent lighting, which has a softer glow, and there's a spiritual aspect to that. Very much so. And
You are correct. You're very correct.
yeah. And so I thank you, Marty, for that. Appreciate you saying
Yeah.
that.
No,
And-
but there's no question. Photographers need to know that, because in many places, many ballrooms and like that, they use the fluorescent light, and that creates a green tone to the appearance of someone's it's reflected off the skin. And what do we associate that with if somebody has that type of complexion? Death, illness. So a photographer either uses filters to reverse that, or looks for a location to photograph the bride and groom in, as Michael was talking, in incandescent light. And it's a very important consideration. Artists also know about that too. Yes, Don.
Well, we know that color can bring out the most sublime emotions, but I don't think we should overlook that basic color is responsible for the most violent divisions among people. And it's shocking how just the difference in skin color
Yes.
has led us into war and the worst that's in man. I can hardly express it. I mean, it makes me so upset to think that we're talking about how color can be so subtle, and yet it isn't subtle.
And it maybe it's somebody or a group of people using these things instead of thinking along the terms of unification, singling out the other. Okay, it doesn't fit in the scheme of things. And that's where we get in trouble. That's where we get in trouble once we try to single out something that's different. We call it bigot. We have different terms for it. We can call it racism. We can call it bigotry. It has many different, bullying. I mean, it has many different words that are used for the other. Okay. Yes, Michael.
It just occurred to me, Marty, that why this is in the Torah, the different colors, was actually meant to spark a discussion of what
You
we're
got it.
having.
Yes. That I agree with. I wouldn't have gone in this direction if it doesn't. You're right on target. Well, there has to be a reason why all of these things are important to mention 3 times. Okay, to go through this again and again and again, and in different generations, we know more detailed information, and it just keeps building upon itself. And what we've done here in the past half hour is to condense a lot of these different ideas into how it relates to this passage in Torah. Yes, Gail. I thought the expression and leaning forward,
No.
you're going to say something. Okay. Yeah. Okay, Rabbi Mary.
Okay, I want to move from the color, since Marty, you started saying how we differentiate people. I was talking differentiation of some realities into others, like Michael was saying the hospital, and I was saying whatever. Now, in our Torah, as far as differentiation, and I call it differentiation, is something that the English translation loses, because the word you is for one and is for the all. And when Marty talks about one and the group, it's a difficult thing. But in Hebrew, it's very clear if you're talking about one or if you're talking about the group. And I call it a, not discrepancy, my words, a tension, there is another word, a tension between the whole and the one. Does the all have to help the all, or the one has to help the all, or the all has to help the one? And these are ethical things that come up. If we'll take a blessing that all of you know, called the Shema, the word Shema is in singular. But the second sentence is Ve'ahavtem, and you shall love. But you see, I say you, Shema, you have to love, and you, plural, you have to love. So it moves from a dichotomy between one and whole. And it's part of our tradition that needs to be seen very, very carefully how it goes. It's a very, very important point. Thank you, Marty.
It's going to come up again in the discussion about Exodus, because all of these things are very important concepts to our religion, as Rabbi Miri is pointing out. And that is also part in Christianity, and some in Islam. And because it's all from the same root. So it's a very interesting thing. And we're not the only people that have thought of this. Okay. It's a universal discussion. And what is interesting is when it comes, I just saw a video of an artificial intelligence. By the way, that's going to be a topic you're going to be hearing more and more of.
Yeah.
But AI, it's in a robotic form, and a very pleasing woman's voice. So it holds everyone's attention, and the AI program is asked, does if somebody said something that was going to harm you, okay, what would you do? And the AI program said, whatever that thing was, okay, I have no idea. It may be me. That it would protect itself. So what is the right thing for humanity? Altruism. Protect each other. But for the computer, it's to protect itself. That's a hidden flaw in the thinking, because there are times when the one has to think in terms that the many are more important. And so you can see this has been addressed in sci-fi since the 40s and 50s. Okay, but it is a serious issue today, and we have to become aware of it. By the way, articles are being written by AI. I know I'm digressing, but articles that you read in the newspaper have been put in there by bloggers that are AI programs. And nobody can really say they know the truth because of what is out there now. Because the programmer is who sets up the algorithms that the computerized program will use. And so it is very difficult today. And all I'm saying is even your fact check programs are AI programs. So you have to be very careful, and just be careful about repeating something you see or hear, or things in the world that's being created for us, because we are going to be entering a phase where we will be in the Sergeant Schultz mode. I know nothing. Yes, Don. And then we have to move on. I'm sorry, I
No,
digress.
I hear you, Marty. I just want to say I use the AI apps a lot, ChatGPT and Bard.
Yeah.
While we were talking, I just entered into Bard. What is the significance of color in the description of the tabernacle in the book of Exodus? And within 2 seconds, I got back. The colors used in the description of the tabernacle in the book of Exodus are significant because they represent different aspects of God's character and the Israelites' relationship with him. Blue is the color of the sky and the sea, and it represents God's holiness and majesty. The curtains of the tabernacle were made of blue linen, and the priestly garments were also decorated with blue. Purple. And so I won't go read the whole thing, but within 2 seconds, I've got an explication of from AI, the meaning of the colors in what we're reading right now.
But that's one way of interpreting it.
Of course, yeah. And the
Because,
other
and that's what I'm saying, where there are
Exactly.
papers being written by college students with this very high concept. And they're getting master's degrees, they're getting PhDs, and because they have figured out ways that the AI programs that look for the originality of a paper,
right.
well, now they have figured out ways that it can sound original in many different ways.
Yeah. Well, I don't go crashing off through the woods
Exactly.
with this information.
Yeah, it's a very
Uh,
dangerous deal.
It is, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
all. So maybe
Thank you,
snail
thank you.
mail is better.
Thank you.
Maybe
Even the
snail mail is
dictionary is better than that. The dictionaries are better than that because the dictionaries will give you on a word several meanings. It's
That's
not
right.
just for one, and it's up to you to select which one fits the.
This will give you as many meanings as you want.
But Don said something important. He asked the AI program Exodus. He used the term Exodus. So the computer focuses on Exodus and then looks at, well, what has someone said? This person, that person, and so forth. Maybe blue is also the color of water and not the sky.
Well, well,
Not
I don't know.
anymore, Marky. Look at the rivers.
That's right. The computer
Sorry.
takes what the majority think.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
all. It's a majority of opinion.
The
So-
average.
So to a modern artist, it wouldn't, or a jazz artist or things like that, it wouldn't make sense. They would. Anyway, we're digressing way too far, and I apologize for doing this. Okay, we will go to verse 21.
Okay, would you like me to do it?
Yeah.
Okay, verse 21. These are the accounts of the tabernacle, even the tabernacle of the testimony, as they were rendered according to the commandment of Moses, in the service of the Levites, by the hand of Ethanamar, the son of Aaron the priest.
Okay. Any comments about this?
One verse.
Okay, any comments? Okay, now we've changed a little bit from the manufacturing, okay, of everything, and now all of a sudden we're shifting to records. Okay, somebody's keeping a journal or a log of what is being done. Okay, what has been done. We alluded to it before when we went into how much everybody brought. How would they know they brought enough? Well, Bezalel says it's enough. Bezalel. Yes, go ahead. I love this. Zoom user Bruce Van Sickle. Pastor Bruce.
I like, you used the word, David used the word testimony. In Hebrew, I'll have to ask Rabbi Miri because it's still not solidified in me. Testimony, agreement, pact. What's the strongest way of looking? It seems like Rabbi Miri is frozen unless she's suspending over. Oh no, she's there.
No, I'm here. I'm looking at the book. The
Okay,
book
good.
is on my table.
Testimony. David used the word testimony.
Today.
I'm looking at agreement or pact or something in there that would cause it to be something that God suggested and or commanded, and then Moses followed through. In I'm just trying to figure out what the word is. That's it seems like it should be stronger than testimony in some ways there.
Are you talking about the second will?
It's
the
the same
tabernacle
word, pick a day.
He used the word tabernacle of
counts.
testimony. Records
It's
and then
Friedman said the accounts.
accounts.
The accounts mean, I think, is telling who's in the head of this part, who's in the head of the other place, because we see Betzalel again, which is about the ornaments and how the aesthetic parts of the. So I think that that's counting. And you know, as you're talking, Pastor Bruce, it occurs to me how much they are counting the people. How much important is to account and to count which one is doing what. And perhaps it was a job that it was given according to the number of people that were in that tribe. So it's difficult for me to understand why they counting people so much. We saw that again, you know, giving that a coin that everyone had to do, and maybe it's the issue that Marty keeps bringing up is about the communities to see what's their size. And later on, Pastor Bruce, we see the amount of land in Canaan that was given to each tribe. And it is very interesting, right, that Judea was given to a large one, and Benjamin, such a small one that Judea incorporated it, like Marana, into the city. I don't know why they account here, or is a summary, let's say, this is the summary how it happened. You know, this was in the head of that and underneath, this was this and underneath. I'm not sure, but it can be connected also with the task. If it was an easy task, perhaps was given to less people than the, I don't have a concrete, what did you call it? Intelligence, AI or IA?
AI. It's to
AI
be differentiated from
respond.
AI.
God,
It's
if
AI.
you can go and Google, because
So
it's
not just
today.
But it's a very it's a very interesting comment that has been brought, commentary that has been brought up, because what is important in keeping records? Why are records kept?
You know,
I mentioned a few already before when we opened everything. Yes, Pastor Bruce. And then David.
You can even look back to prior to Passover was Purim, and the records are important because the records even that the king of Susa was reading were important, because then he said, what would you do to honor such a person that did something? Because they were keeping the records, and here Mordecai was in here, and what did we do for this guy? You know, and in the process of that, then we see Esther. Records are important for historical facts, but they're also important for people to look at and say, oh my goodness, maybe we didn't do something that we should have done. And per Don's, I think it was Don, saying that, you know, it's kind of like important to have all the details because it had to be rebuilt. And so there's all kinds of reasons for these things. And I think that they're all important. The historical facts, the fact that we may have forgotten to do something, or the fact that there's very detailed, important things so that you can reconstruct or redo what needs to be done. And again, significantly, as we always talk about the word remember. If you
Mhm.
don't write it down,
You got it.
how many people even today in Green Valley, if you don't write it down, can't remember? I'll raise my hand now.
There you go. That's right.
Not in Green Valley.
All I'm saying is if you don't write it down and it's not there for you to reflect on, to know, to be able to do all these things we've been talking about, then it's going to get lost.
Right. If you think of what Pastor Bruce just said is a very important thing. I know Michael isn't here, but that's why actors, musicians, artists, writers, they have to keep doing, a craftsman, whatever, they have to keep doing it so that they can refresh that memory. Just like AI. The more it does it, it remembers that more. Yes, David and then Don.
Well, my point will easily pick up from what Pastor Bruce just said. The record keeping is the memory either of an individual or of an institution.
Mhm.
The National Archives are the official memory of the United States,
Mhm.
but they don't have everything in them. And there are other things that are also adding to the memory of the United States and the memory of the world. When I was young and just starting in astronomy, I saw a display of northern lights, and a few weeks later, I reported it to the person at the club who was in charge of northern lights, and he said, "Did you write it down?" And I said, "No, I didn't." He said, "Then you didn't see it." And I've never forgotten that lesson.
Wow.
It's memory that is so important. And
Yes.
thank you, Bruce, for bridging me into that.
That's right.
Yeah.
Dear Diary. That's it. It's another form. Yes, Don.
Well, just echoing what Pastor Bruce and David just said, records, it's the only form of external memory outside the mind.
Right.
The tablets themselves, so we don't have to say, oh, did it say we could kill it? We could not kill, we're not. So it's the only thing we have, and it doesn't matter if it's carved tablets or thumb drives or books. It's all outside the skull, and it's the only means we have of recording history.
That's right. That's why everybody, that you have so many journals of all these things that people do. Yes,
Yeah.
Rabbi Mary, you were going to say something, and then Gail.
Also, it's numbers in the Torah also are to symbolize, the symbols today. For
Mhm.
example, we just read in the Haggadah of Pesach that when the Bnei Israel, the people of Israel, came into Egypt, after Joseph came into Egypt, there were 70. That's what the Haggadah said, according to the Torah. And when they left, there were thousands. So when you say that and tell the story like that, you know how they grew in number. And that bothered Pharaoh very much, that they grew in numbers. So when we said, oh, 1 million people dead, it's not exactly, but it's a feeling of this small one versus
Mhm.
this big one. Yeah. Yes. The other thing that I can add is the word in Hebrew also has the same root as mefaked. And mefaked is it's the captain or the sergeant or someone that counts how many soldiers are dead. And also the same root says, it tells, I poked you to do see and this. I poked you to do this and this. So the artificial intelligence is going to give you probably only one, And here you have also other thoughts about, and military is a good thing. Military is built on the numbers of the first group has this, the second group has this, the third. My grandson was in a military high school, and he tried to explain to me all those things, so I know. And regarding writing notes, I, at the university or whatever, wrote notes, and when I came home, I couldn't understand the word that I wrote. So don't give me to write notes. I cannot be a secretary. But it's very true. As you said, Marty, the diaries of people tell so much.
That's right. And they're not, as David was saying, you know, he alluded to that. The diaries are not in the Library of Congress. Okay.
Yeah.
David, you had your hand up again.
Yeah, I wanted to add something that I had forgotten. Wendy, may she rest in peace, and I were talking a number of years ago, about 10 years ago, and I announced that I was going to stop keeping a pen and ink journal and a pen and ink observing log, and I'm going to put everything onto the computer only. And Wendy asked me a very interesting question. She said, in 500, 1,000 years from now, who is going to read anything on Windows XP or Windows 10? And who is going to have a chance to pick up a book, open its pages, pick up a tablet or something that you've handwritten and be able to read it in 1,000 years from now? And I've never forgotten that either.
Good point. Good point. Okay, Gail, and then Don.
Yeah. Everyone here, I'm sure, is familiar with Thoreau from Walden Pond.
Mm-hmm.
He kept minute notes about
Yes.
what was growing, what birds he saw, when, the weather, temperature, all this sort of thing, for his own use.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't doing it for anybody except himself. Today, climate change scientists are referring to his notes to see the difference, what's happened to that area of Walden Pond. So you never know. So hang in there and keep doing your notes, David.
It's very important. I'm going to come back to David in a second too, but go ahead, Don.
One of the most ancient kinds of record keeping, and which affects the Jews directly, is the census.
Mm-hmm.
And generally it was used for taxation, but I think it was in David's court that he was punished for keeping a census against God's direction. And then leading up to the Holy Inquisition in Spain, I recall one quotation from the King of Spain was that the Jews were multiplying like the sands on the beach. That was actually one of the factors that led to the Inquisition, was just the sheer population growth. So
Okay.
it's always winds through our history.
Good point. And Pastor Bruce.
Somebody mentioned the diaries, and we have Karen's mother was a thorough keeper of every day she journaled. She journaled every day. We have a whole box of journals of hers. And what is most blessed for us to read in there is when she specifically prayed for something and it was answered. We saw it because we didn't know. That wasn't something she shared with us till after she passed away. And then her dad said, these are all of your mother's journals, please take them. And then we got to review year after year after year after year of her very specific things that she wrote down about whatever she wanted to write about. But some of those things were, I prayed today for, and then maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, another something about that particular something. And that was extremely meaningful for
Sure.
us
Sure.
and beneficial for us as a family. And so, David, keep writing, and
Yeah.
nobody will go into an old XP file to read anything. That's for sure.
This is so you see a lot of wisdom come out from people in our past, and we do it verbally, but if we don't write it down, parts can be forgotten. Parts can be confused. Stories can become one, and when they are two separate stories. And this can really pose difficulties. Now you see the difficulties in writing Torah from an oral tradition to a written. And then what are you going to write? So how? Yes, Gail.
Yes, there's an acquaintance here at La Posada that just attended the Stegner Symposium in Salt Lake City. And he recorded for me all these sessions. And probably one of the most moving ones was by a Shoshone Indian. His last name is Berry. He's head of the Shoshone tribe. And he was talking about oral history. But he said, with us, and he was talking about Indian, he said, oral history is pure gold.
Mm-hmm.
That, and it's not like some of the things that you scientists write down, because he was addressing scientists in this room. He said it's like telephone, it changes and it's never the same 2 books later. He said, but oral history is different within the Indian tribe. This is pure gold, and you do not change a word. I mean, he was adamant about this. I was very impressed. And anyhow, it was a very moving talk, and he was talking about the environment. But oral history was a great deal about this in his talk. It was really interesting.
It is. So I took that to heart when I did a lot of reading about the Hopi. And the more I read from different sources, they had interviewed different family clans. And different family clans had different stories. Which one do you pick? It's very hard. If you think about the task, and so like when you recognize that that there are different ways of telling the story, if a lawyer was present, they'd say, "Oh yeah, how do we do this in court?" From one witness to the next. How do historians piece things together? Who have they listened to more than the other? We don't know the whole story. The idea is to try to find out more, and doing that. I want to ask David one question. And David, when you look at the stars, you look at the stars and you see the same pattern every night. Okay, it changes with the seasons and like that, but the stars are in the same relative positions all the time. So how do you find the asteroids or comets or planets for that matter?
Well, partly because I know the positions of the stars over so many decades that I'm able to notice pretty quickly if something, especially something fuzzy, is moving among the stars.
Right.
And if I don't, I have an atlas of the stars that I can refer to, and to be able to see that and to be able to follow it. But I wanted to bring up something that Don had said before, having to do with the historicity of the scriptures. In the book of Exodus, there's virtually no evidence archaeologically or historically that the Hebrews were ever in Egypt, or maybe a tribe or two might have been there, but not the entire people. However, Don mentioned something about a census, and I'm really glad that he did. He mentioned something about a census that King David had ordered to be taken. And apparently God did not approve of the census, for he sent a terrible sword which hung over Jerusalem. Now, there is very strong evidence of one of the earliest known comets, unlike a sword, over China, and was recorded by the Chinese back then. And that is historical evidence that King David was around, and he probably, or quite possibly, did see that comet with the sword hanging over Jerusalem. And I just wanted to confirm the
Interesting.
importance of
Sure.
what he said.
So I was going to also, but Michael's not here. You run into the same thing in music. A musician can go to a symphony and say, they played the wrong note. Just automatically. But because they know how to read music, what they have heard years and years of through years and years of study. Rabbis will do the same thing. Doctors will do the same thing. It's a very important aspect to life. Yes, Rabbi Mary.
First of all, I'm going to contest what you just said. We're not doing the same as in the diaries or in the account. Thank goodness. Okay. In the past, if you want anesthesia for a patient, you gave him whiskey and you hit his head, and then you pull out the tooth. So we have developed things that happen. And we change them. And in music is the same. We have what it calls variations on the theme. The same with painting. I just look at all Picasso, a book like that, not all of it, and I see he writes like Rembrandt, and he paints something it's inspired by, and the word inspire is important. But what I wanted to say, David, is that the census appears in Exodus. The census appear in Exodus as a story, and you're right, because King David is already history. There are proofs there, so you're better off taking that in there. Now, regarding the different stories about the same thing, just start from Genesis. You have two stories.
That's right.
And in my, when I want to be funny, I said, well, there were two guys tell different stories, and the one that pays more gets his story out. So they didn't want to fight over there, so they put the two stories. And it's very clear that there are two different stories. The best one is about the creation of men and women. So open the book and see the second one, because it's one that they don't teach in Sunday school.
Okay, any other discussion there? That's okay.
I think it's called a CYA. That's why you have both stories.
A good one. Anyway, no, but this is, it's normal human behavior. I think that's one of the things I find personally, I find comfort in Torah. I see all the warts and all the bad stuff, but I see the overall thread of good that's woven into things. It's basically more human. That's all. Yes, David.
One of the things that adds to the very important comment that Don made earlier is that particular comment, I think, is the very first historical comet on record. It was like 200 or 300 BC and BCE, and it's the time of David, I think, about the same time that the Chinese observed this comet. And the sword hanging over Jerusalem is so important that it is actually mentioned every year during the Passover Seder. And it's quoted every Seder. And in one of my books that I wrote about comets, I actually refer to.
Good point. But there's a reason why I wanted to open this discussion also. When certain words have been used in describing the different experiences as to why records are kept and everything, because this is the pattern that was developed in the past. But when David looks to see if he can find a new comet, by knowing the pattern, you look for the differences. And it's the difference that allows him to move and say, that doesn't fit. That's something new, or okay, somebody else saw it, but it doesn't fit the pattern. That's what I was alluding to with Michael. That's what we're talking about people. We're talking about things. It's how we use that. Okay, even you can go back to the chemistry of our brain and everything, and why we suddenly are attracted if a certain light flashes off to the periphery, we'll turn our head, or a sound. So it doesn't belong. It's something new. It's survival. Okay, you weren't eaten by something bigger than you. So when you get down to it, this is the way we're built. But I think it's very important when we look at the structure here as to why it's important to mention things. Why are different names mentioned? Okay, why is it important to mention Ithamar? Well, it's the priesthood. Why is it important to re-mention Bezalel, tribe of Dan? Okay, as it said, and we're going to read on and on and on as we read the different names and why these groups were very important, what they provided for the construction of the Mishkan, tabernacle, who did what. Very, very important. Why do we remember Moses? Why do we remember Aaron? Why do we do it? What do we remember about them? If it isn't written, we can come up with lots of different stories. And it depends, we're limited by what we can get our hands on in a library. So AI is doing it faster. Okay, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the only AI program out there doing that. There may be another AI program somewhere that's looking at it from a different point of view, just like different human brains, different minds. And if we can respect it in AI, we should be able to respect it in each other's brains as well. Everyone's mind is important, not only to them, but the rest of us. That's what I get out of this. Okay. And I don't know if it's universal or if it's just me, but it gives me some peace of mind. And it also gives me a sense of hope. And I think that's part of the story here. Why is this important? What can we learn about all of these people who did things? And there's another theme that we will discuss later on. I didn't realize we were not going to get to the end today. So, but that's okay. Any further comments here? Yes, Gail, go ahead.
Okay, on verse number 21.
Yes, that's where we left off.
I know, well, but I just want to read to a certain point. These are the accounts of the tabernacle of the testimony. Okay, this is where it's important. That were made by Moses' word. Okay.
Okay,
It
my
doesn't say God
reading,
commanded, it said
right.
it were made by Moses' word, which is really interesting. You know, it brings it down to a human element here, rather than
Always,
from above.
Yeah.
yes,
Okay. So it's kind of it's a small point, but I think it's really important too.
that's right. It is, and it dovetails into the whole discussion that we're having. Very important. David, if you would read verses 22 and 23.
Okay, let me find it. It's been a while now.
I know, we're digressing a lot today.
22 and 23. And Bezalel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur, and the tribe of Judah made all that the Lord commanded Moses. And with him was Oholiab, the son of Elisamach, and the tribe of Dan, a craftsman and a skillful workman, and a weaver in colors, in blue and in purple and in scarlet and fine linen.
Okay, so now we're seeing which tribes were involved in what. Earlier on, it didn't attribute certain crafts to certain tribes. It just said people brought these things and did the following task. Now we're getting back to individual clans and individuals within the clans. So we've gone from the individual to the group, and now from the group to the individual, back and forth like that. Any other comments? Okay. Suddenly everybody disappeared. Okay.
I'm here.
You're still here, Mary? Okay.
I'm here. And
Oh, you're here
Seven
too,
people.
Grace. Okay.
7 people are still on.
Okay. And I don't know if Michael's okay, because sometimes his eyes get dry. He's mentioned that to us before. And
Pastor Bruce sent on chat that he needs to leave.
yes, I know that. Yes. Any
Me to go on with 24.
yes, please.
Okay,
Yeah. Why don't you read all the way through 28?
all right, sure. All the gold that was used for the work and all the work of the sanctuary, even the gold of the offering, was 29 talents and 730 shekels after the shekel of the sanctuary. And the silver of them that were numbered of the congregation was 100 talents and 1,715 shekels after the shekel of the sanctuary. A bekah, a head, that is half a shekel, after the shekel of the sanctuary, for everyone that passed over to them that are numbered from 20 years old and upward, for 600,000 and 3,550 men. And the 100 talents of silver were for casting the sockets of the sanctuary and the sockets of the veil, 100 sockets for the 100 talents, a talent for a socket. And of the 1,775 shekels, he made hooks for the pillars and overlaid their capitals and made fillets for them.
Okay. Any comments? Well, if this is recorded, and let's say you gave a shekel, because that's what they, or half a shekel, okay? And you saw it put to use, and it was melted down. Excuse me, 1 second, Michael, are your eyes okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
because
you.
I know you sometimes have problems with your eyes with that.
Yeah, it's all the time. It's not, I wish
Yeah.
it was sometime, but thank you. I had to get him rested, that's all.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay, you're welcome.
And put some drops in. I got prescription drops. I have to put them all day, all night. It's not,
Mhm.
it's terrible. Doing the best I can. Thank you, Marty.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Anyway, so when you see things done with what you've donated, let's say you brought in crimson yarn, or you supplied linen, or you supplied some gold and things like that, and you suddenly see it all come together, how do you feel? How do you feel about that? How do you feel?
Feeling of
when-
accomplishment.
Yes, that you played an important part. It gives you a sense of importance. That you played some small role, maybe a bigger role, doesn't matter, but it's how you feel about yourself. Now, the bad side of that is you can go around bragging to other people. The good side is you keep it within, and you may want to do more the next time. That's why when you make a donation, some organizations will send you a card thanking you for even your dollar donation. It doesn't have to be above a certain amount, because maybe the next time you felt so good about seeing your money go to some good use that you'll do it again and again and again. Yes, Don.
Yeah, I just never noticed this portion, but I find it a bit shocking that all of a sudden we're in a money economy here, and shekels are introduced
Mhm.
because all this work was part of it was a voluntary mission to create the tabernacle, and the people with the skills and the craftsmen with the skills
Sure.
are all doing what they know how to do. And the fact that a money economy, so the shekel has to be valued on some basis or other, like any other economy, but I don't really see how that fits into what we've been studying here. Why was it necessary to introduce money into this situation?
Good question.
Who gets the money, and where does it come from? And
Well, if you want to see,
do the rich give more, or what?
we don't know. You would say that, but if you look at it from a standpoint of percentage of what they had, maybe a poor person gave a larger, gave 1 shekel, but to that person, it was so much more valuable because it was a higher percentage of what that person owned. And yet, maybe a very rich person gives the same amount, and it's not worth anything to them because they have so much more. I don't think that's what it's about. I don't think it's about that, to compare this amount and that amount.
That's not what I was asking. It's because there was a money economy when
Yeah.
when this was written after the Babylonian times. It was standard money economy. Everybody knew what money was and everybody used it. But back at this time, there wasn't. There was a trading economy. You know, I'll give you a bushel of grain for that bolt of fabric over there. So I just.
And what time is that? Don,
Right.
tell me when that happened. What year is happening now that you know that there was no economy?
Well,
How do you know?
as far as I know,
A
historically,
monetary economy.
that, you know, 2,500 years ago, it was a bartering economy. It wasn't a money economy. And
I agree with you, but
But-
then you are
Where's
contesting the shekels now at this point. The issue is that we don't know when this is happening, and I'm trying to say it's not history, it's a story. And
But
the
it's
story
accurate.
might have happened written later on when shekel did appear, and we move it there. It's called, even the rabbis say, Ein mukdam o meuchar b'Torah. There is no early or late in the Torah.
But
And
it's
one
the-
of the reasons is what we were talking about, oral tradition. It was a good story, but at the time that I wrote it down, there were shkalim, there was a shekel. Actually, that started very early, but you're absolutely right. The earliest time it was exchange. It was not money. Money is a later concept. What I'm
That's right.
keep saying, and you can buy it or reject, that's fine with me. It's not history. And therefore, we don't know when it happens. We don't know that it happened or how it happened. But it could happen. It's a good story. And
But it's the Exodus. The Exodus, you know, it's the Exodus from Egypt. We know within 500 years when that happened. What, you know, I just think it damages the introduction of money damages the Torah. Is what that's my feeling, you know, the veracity of what we're reading.
But it also
What?
tells you about how generous the people were in giving these amounts by head count or by weight. Okay, in other
But
words, so
let's say,
look at it
Don-
from the standpoint that was just a lot. They gave a lot
Uh,
of stuff and just leave it at that.
Don, think
It
about it
is.
this way.
Yeah,
This was a story, and the story was told again and again and again and again. And the last again, before writing it down, there was already money. Therefore, the writer said, well, all the gold that they gave was worthy 30 shekels. And that's what the people are understanding, because at that time that he's telling that story, there are shkalim. And the issue of being history and you looking, did they have money at the time that we are reading now?
Well,
I
would
doubt
like, if I may, I would like to push back a little bit, because when this was written, the rabbis were smart. They weren't dumb. You know, they were educated. And I would like to believe that at least a few of them would say, wait a minute, we want this to be believable history. And we know that they didn't have money at that time because we're smart rabbis. So why not tell like it probably was? Why introduce money when we know better? And I don't know if I can get over, I hear what you're saying, but I don't know if I can get over that hurdle. So, but I'm happy to leave it. I'm happy to just leave it.
Now, at the time of the rabbis, after the Torah was written, the Torah was canonized, and you don't touch it. That's what it says. And then comes Rashi and Friedman and Don and Yale, and everyone does their explanation. But they explain They put it in the Talmud. They write about it. Now, if we were in a place that you write a midrash, a story about the shekel, you can introduce that, but you don't touch what's written, canonize. Every book in the Tanakh is canonized, no touching.
Well, that's-
However, but I think we're missing a major point here. A major point. Records are being kept. What we are introducing are our own feelings about certain types of records and what they may connote rather than denote. And what all that they're doing is they recorded all of this. They recorded all of this. But what's going to be important is what it's used for, how it's used, and everything. And it's to build something that is going to inspire a future for the Israelites. It has nothing to do whether the money is good or bad, economics is good or bad. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the importance of creating something, whether you do it with your hands or you do it with an offer, a monetary donation or whatever. It's for the common good. That's the important message. Don't get wrapped up in the detail. The detail here distracts you to something that takes you away from the religion and degrades it intentionally.
What I'm hearing is this is just like AI. I don't believe it.
So you have to look for the thread as to why something is being done. We're privileged to know the future. We're not privileged to know our future from where we are now. But we do know that if we didn't look at the good and the bad, all these different opinions, and say, how can we use it for getting ahead as a group, we would have lost ourselves in a discussion centuries ago, and it would never have been written, and it would never have entered and given us reasons for doing things in the future. Because this is donations. How do you keep track of them? Yes, Gail, please.
I think what Marty's trying to say,
Please, it's okay.
think of it as symbolism of donations. You don't get into whether it was pieces of gold or a shekel or what. The symbolism of giving. So think of it from that perspective rather than getting stuck on a word about exactly what it was. Okay. The symbolism of donation. Okay.
I think that it rings just of what you said about AI. Don't believe it. You know, it's manipulative, and there's no reason to give it any validity because it was used for a purpose, and the purpose is to extract donations and to get the people to contribute more money later on. I mean, that's how I'm seeing it, and that's what I'm hearing from you. And as I said, I'm willing to drop it because I'm past that.
No, it's for a good deed. It's for a good deed. You can do a good deed in many different ways. By making something for a purpose, for giving money to help make it, for educating, for what you name it, it doesn't matter. But what does matter is so that the majority can benefit from it.
I
That's
think
all.
the word would be mitzvahs.
That's another way of looking at it.
Creating a mitzvah.
And these people had that in mind at this time, that they gave beyond what was necessary. Hey, wait a minute, folks. You gave so much. Don't forget that you still have to give in the future. And that's going to come up again. We're going to have this discussion again when we talk about growing crops and what you have to save for the poor and everything. This comes up again and again. So I don't want to use up all the time on this. Yes, Michael, go ahead and
Yeah. And so if one is going to give, let's say, $50,000 to a charity of some type, the Jewish way is not to give it all at once, to divide, to give it a portion at a time. So it creates a way of it shows others. Let me put it this way: it shows others about making a plan to give.
Mhm.
It shows a way of giving, not only, and so I think that has to be a kind of talked about as well, is to create
Mhm.
I don't like to use the word habit, but I suppose, for lack of a better word, that would be a pattern. Instead of giving a large sum of money at once, a little at a time.
It's 613. Okay. It gives you all of our discussion is wrapped up in the number 613.
Okay.
That's all I'm going to say. Okay, Rabbi Mary, and then David.
Well, I just want to quote something that we already passed and we talked about it. There is money that's tax. There is money that's census. So there we said census, you put a coin, that's what it says, you put a coin in the hat, and then they can count how many people are there. But then it says, give money as your heart wants. Nedava, and it's called ALMA. When you give a poor person some charity,
Alms.
Alms. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
that's one.
Okay.
So it's what your heart tells
Yes.
you to give. And that's what Michael is talking about. I didn't know of the cutting into pieces, but we talked about it. We saw it, that those are two different things, the tax and the that. So the contributions were there already. And for those contributions, there were no limits.
No limits. It's what you feel. It's here. Yes, David. David.
Thank you. I know we're running out of time, and I just wanted to go back to Don's very good comment about records done there about an hour ago. During the conversation, I was actually able to do a little research. I actually found the particular comet that hung over Jerusalem like a sword and which is read every Passover. And that was apparently the comet of 971 BCE. And I believe that about 1000 BCE probably takes us back approximately to the time of David. Not me, I hope, but the real David. And so it actually is a pin, if we accept that we can do some historicity research about the scriptures, and which actually takes me more. I wish somebody in all of the Israelites wandering in the desert had kept a journal, whether it's online or in script or writing in stone or whatever, because if that person had, we'd have a historical record. But if that person had, it's been lost, and we don't have that record, at least not for now. Anyway, Don, thank you for that comment earlier.
So
and as I said, David, the King David is in the history. When they entered the Canaan, that's Joshua. From that book, that's Kings
Mhm.
and
Yes.
prophets and so forth, comes into history. But until then, I'm sorry, Don, I don't think it's history.
Anyway, I think this is a good place to stop because we didn't, and I have to apologize. It was my fault with all the digressions. But I have to apologize for that. I'm just putting a mark where we left off. So, but I think that what Rabbi Mary is saying is very important because this is still part of what was passed down from oral history. And we do know, and we believe, if we read Rabbi Friedman's work, different works of different groups of people, how they wound up putting their version of what happened.
Good boy.
We have
Yeah.
the P, the
Good boy.
J, the E. We have so many different versions that have been amalgamated here and put together. Maybe that's what this is, why it's being done. When you think about a group of people from all different backgrounds coming together to do something for a purpose, okay? And they hope for a better future. That's good enough. I don't have to worry about so many of the other details and like that. Because when we look at it today, 100 years from now, they're going to look at it totally different because not everything is explained to us. There are huge gaps. And that's why I enjoy the gaps, because we're able to discuss it in different ways. Yes, Gail.
Marty, you really don't need to apologize for, diverging from the subject. We are notorious for doing that.
Yes. Okay.
That's what we do.
But I really enjoy Don very much because you add something to the discussion that would otherwise be glossed over.
Called disruption.
No, but it's important. This is the same thing.
Not.
This is the same thing that I was alluding to. Michael wasn't here at the time. The note played in an orchestral piece, a musician, somebody who really knows the music, said, oh, they played the wrong note. The oboe hit the wrong note, or the violinist played the wrong note. But we give some lateral interpretation to the conductor for a symphony. But you can do that every time you play a piece at home. You can change it the way you want to play the music. The same thing with an artist. One day you may want to have a deep red. Next day you may want to have a paler shade of red. In something similar. And the writer may choose a different word. In the English language, we have so many words that we've taken from many authors throughout the history of English. And that's good. That's the good part. The bad part is if we focus on that error, the wrong note or the wrong harmonic or the wrong shade or hue of a color, or the wrong use of the word. What about it? What does this word use? What does it? By the way, there are philosophers who went into all of this. Camus comes to mind. And if we focus too much on what Camus was trying to get across, you know, we don't really know what was in the minds of the people who wrote it. Okay, all we can do is surmise, but that's going to change from day to day, not just generation to generation. And the discussion we're having today is going to be altogether different in 100 years. It's going to be different if we go back and try to reconstruct this discussion next week. It's going to be totally different. So, but that's the beauty of having empty spaces. And that to me is more important, because that's the foundation of midrash. And it's what midrash you want to pick from here and pull from there that you put together and come up with a whole new thread. AI does it beautifully. It can do it constantly like that, and faster than you just put in names today, 3 words, and it can create a whole story. So it's fascinating. It's fascinating. So you have the good, the bad, and the ugly. Okay. Yes, Michael, you're going to have the final word, Michael.
Okay.
We're over time.
Yeah, and what you're saying is very fascinating. In my profession of music, I don't use music anymore. I don't read sheet music anymore, and it's been like that for a long time. Every time I play a song, it could be the song Stardust.
Mhm.
I play it differently every time, but I don't change the song. I don't change the song. I use different chords and this and that, and people say, I never heard that song played that way. And I say, what song is it? You're playing Stardust. So I don't change the song. I just change a few things that make it more interesting.
That's all. By the way, that's what we do every Torah study. That's you know, but if you listen to people's discussions around dinner tables and like that, that's what it's all about. It's a differing little opinions and things like that. If everyone said the same thing the same way all the time, it could get boring. But if you want to play for an orchestra and you're going to perform, you have to know what you're doing. You have to practice at it and do it the way you want it. It's a fascinating thing, but this is the tension that was mentioned before between the individual and the group, and how the ideas of an individual can be rejected sometimes, but at the same time, what the individual has brought into the group sometimes allows for a more interesting discussion, and we have to always make room for that. It doesn't mean that everybody will agree, but at least everybody will be heard. That's sort of like our Constitution. Yes, Gail. Oh, bye. Okay, I better shut up. I'm in a mood today to talk, and I apologize. Anyway, have fun. Have a